So we just had the second anniversary of Google Stadia, and I wanted to give you my thoughts on how I feel the service is currently doing, why certain negatives are present, and what I think the future looks like. To start off, I want to give you a little information on my history with the service. I purchased the Founders Edition back in July of 2019 and have been a Stadia Pro subscriber since it was first launched and currently still am. I also am subscribed to Game Pass Ultimate, which gives me access to xCloud, which I also use from time to time. So I feel like I have a pretty good experience with the service and others to base my opinions on. Also, while some of my opinions may not be perceived well by some, all I ask is that you leave a comment so that we can discuss it further and understand where each is coming from. Currently, Stadia is the #1 place for cloud gaming when it comes to the quality of the gaming experience. Stadia is still the only place for 4K cloud gaming, albeit it is upscaled, but no one else at this time offers this capability. Also, Stadia is the most stable cloud gaming service on the market when it comes to lag, button inputs, and consistent quality. Now, of course, all of that depends on you having a strong internet connection. The only area Stadia is not #1 in is games. That goes to xCloud. Now, even though Stadia doesn't have a ton of AAA titles, I do believe they are doing well in the gaming space, considering they just launched an entirely new service based on a Linux architecture that doesn't align with what is currently being offered through other gaming companies like Sony, Microsoft, etc. You might be wondering why that matters, or thinking I'm saying Linux is bad. I'm not. However, Stadia's player base is low, so developers are not going to be optimistic about investing time and resources into porting their game to your platform because there aren't many people to potentially buy the game. Now add the fact that your platform is not even similar to the other platforms they are currently developing the game on, which makes developing the port even more difficult. It just compounds the issue even further. This is something Microsoft doesn't have to deal with because their cloud infrastructure is literally just Xbox Series X blades. So the effort to bring an Xbox game to xCloud as well is minimal. So when you take that into account, it will be a while before developers feel comfortable allocating resources to create Stadia ports of their games, which makes it difficult to have a huge gaming catalog. But even with those pain points, they have done well to get games on the service. Now, the first response to the lack of games is usually, Google needs to give out money to devs to incentivize them to develop on their platform. Now, while money may seem like a common sense approach to get games on your platform, it really is not that cut and dry. Google can't just throw out a ton of money at some developer to bring their AAA title over because Google still wants to actually profit from the game, and with a small player base, it will probably take more money than what they project they could make from the sales to make it happen. For instance, let's say the player base on Stadia is 100,000 people. The AAA developer, let's say for Call of Duty, says it will take 20 million to bring the game over to Stadia. If the game sold to every player on the service for $60 a pop, that's only $6 million in sales. Now we all know no game will sell to 100% of players, so a more reasonable number would probably be 40% or so. Not to mention whatever split in sales Google and the developer agreed to on those sales. So now Google just lost, in the best scenario, 14 million and more than likely 17 million, plus whatever they have to give to the developers. No company is going to go in and say, let's invest at an 80 to 90% loss. Secondly, developers, even with Google offering to foot the bill, may also just say, no thanks. Developers are usually already under extreme time constraints to get these games out and are not looking to add additional workload, especially when the sales ceiling is so low. Developers expect sales to outperform investments, not the other way around. Anytime the investment is projected to outperform sales, it doesn't work for either party involved. Now you may be thinking, well, why don't developers bring in more resources for Stadia ports? Again, these resources will still need to be managed, still need to report timeline, and still also have engagement with investors, in this case Google, on where they stand on development, which can be seen as more headache than it's worth for the developer. This doesn't mean Google should stop shelling out money to entice AAA game developers to port games to Stadia, but what it does mean is that you can't be upset when every popular AAA title doesn't appear on the service. Google is still a business first, so if they know they're going to take a loss on this big title, which I'm sure they know, then you can only take those losses on certain titles, not all titles. If I were Google, I wouldn't invest money in a Call of Duty or Fortnite style of game, even though I know people in the Stadia community would love to have access to those titles. Reason being, these titles are mostly played by individuals who are highly competitive, and every millisecond of delay matters to them. Stadia, while having extremely low latency and input delay, is still not on par with playing on dedicated hardware when it comes to those areas. So, you do not want to bring in a toxic, so to speak, player base that will completely rail on your service if they perceive they died because an input dropped or the game had a jitter. As an upcoming and already scrutinized service, this will bring tons of overreacted negative remarks on the service that might make the gaming community even more hesitant to try it. This to me is why Google seems to focus their AAA game investments in more co-op FPS looter shooters like Borderlands and Destiny, while also focusing on the action-adventure type of AAA game like Red Dead Redemption and Cyberpunk. These games are not seen as big competitive games and are less likely to garner negative feedback to slight stutters every so often. But while they are investing in these games, they should also be using just as much capital in another area, marketing. My opinion is that Google should focus more on advertising the service to grow the player base, which would in turn give developers more confidence their games have the player base needed to give them a good return on investment. Forming partnerships with companies who supply smart TVs, which are capable of running the service by bundling a 3-month Stadia Pro subscription and controller with the purchase of the TV. Ensuring Stadia is advertised on the box as well, so customers are aware of what it is and what it can do and have to invest nothing to try the service out. The second advertisement focus should be YouTube. Ads should be focused on Stadia wherever gaming related searches are performed on YouTube, for users that do not have YouTube Premium, of course. Also, these advertisements should run on YouTube Kids as well, targeting parents who are looking to avoid the high cost of gaming consoles for their younger kids who are interested in playing games as well. This also introduces those kids to cloud gaming and allows them to grow up using the service, and as they mature, so will the capabilities of the service and internet infrastructure in general, which the service relies on heavily. The third area of marketing is Twitch and YouTube streamers. This is a key area Google seems to largely ignore. Google needs to pay for sponsored streams of Stadia games from big streamers on both of these platforms. That way, you get a ton of eyes on your product, and they get to see how well it actually performs live without any fancy video edits. Have the streamers also include state shares or click to play now links in those streams for people who want to test it out as well. Also, each time one of these sponsored streams are happening for that particular game, make sure those links enable free play for 1 to 2 hours of that game. That way, there is no paywall deterring those interested in playing. Now, advertising other areas can also help generate interest, but I believe the avenues I mentioned would be key strategies in exposure and provide an education on just what Stadia is. As for the future of the service, my hope is that Google continues the investment through the 4 to 5 year period that probably will not be profitable. If reports are to be believed, and since Google will not publish sales or active player counts on the Stadia service, that kind of solidifies that reports of poor sales are probably true. Google has taken huge losses on bringing AAA titles like Destiny 2, Red Dead Redemption 2, and Cyberpunk 2077 to their service. The most difficult hurdle for them is to keep making these investments with the belief that this service can mature into something of value, even though it may not seem like it will ever become profitable at the moment. As crossplay becomes more and more accepted and utilized between consoles and PC gaming, this will be the biggest help to Stadia in my opinion. The biggest hurdle in getting players to come over to Stadia is that those players want to still be able to play with their friends, and it is next to impossible to convert the whole group. But with crossplay, you can maybe get 1 or 2 of them, and they can still play with those friends, allowing new Stadia players to retain the bonds, but also allowing the non-converts the ability to see how well the service performs from someone they know and trust. Also, parents who game on consoles can utilize Stadia for their kids who maybe want to play with them, but their parents don't want to buy another console for the home. Crossplay allows them to still play together without another huge investment on the parents' part to bring their kid or kids into the fray. Finally, the expansion of 5G cellular service will also be essential to the growth of cloud gaming as a viable gaming platform. No matter what platform you choose to game on, one thing is consistent among all those players: they have cell phones. The bandwidth of 5G is more than enough to play these games using Stadia, and with crossplay and cross-save features being implemented in more games, this opens the opportunity for true game anywhere capability. In all my time playing and using the Stadia service, it has always been great. This is why I'm hoping that throughout all the upfront losses and turmoil that Google does stick with it and keep investing in the service, as cloud gaming will become a huge part of the gaming ecosystem in years to come. There was a time when the majority of people never thought streaming movies would ever be anything. But as the internet became better and better, now it is literally the only thing people use to watch movies and TV shows. Of course, music has been taking this path well before movies. The only one left standing is gaming. True console and PC level gaming being brought under the same umbrella as music and movies. All possible to be played from one centralized and mobile device to keep you connected to all your entertainment at all times. So even if the worst happens and Stadia does indeed get discontinued, we will still always be able to look back on Google as the company that proved that this level of gaming was possible through cloud-based streaming. This is the service that gave birth to xCloud, Luna, GeForce Now, and many others. So whether or not Stadia is here to stay, I can't tell you that. But what I can say for certain, cloud gaming is.